everybody, is it that time of the week already? Time for This Week in Cleantech, our 15-minute roundup of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy each week. Today is Friday, November 14th, 2025, not Thanksgiving yet. I've been told by the powers that be, those who keep track of the calendars, Mike, that it's late this year. We got a couple more weeks before turkey time, which is a bummer. You know what's not a bummer, though? We've got a returning guest on the horn. Rachel Frazin, as in Raisin from the Hill, joining us shortly. I hear we've lured her to this show not once, not twice, but this being a third time.
Yes.
As the expression goes, Mike Casey, shame on you if we trick you to come on once. But if we trick you 2 or 3 times, it's kind of a shame on you situation. It's a pleasure to have her nonetheless.
Let me tell you something. You're so sleep deprived, new dad. You'd even pull that off. Like that.
No, you're right. I punted on it. I George W. Bushed it about a couple lines in. I was like, you know what? I don't remember this damn phrase either. I'm gonna go ahead and just toss it like he did. Anyway, I'm Factor This content director Paul Gerke in week 3 of fatherhood. So scraping me from the bottom of the shoe to come out here. I actually started a pot of coffee before we started the record, and then I didn't drink it. You know, it doesn't work if you don't drink it. It's kind of like when the wife and I are like, oh, we're so dehydrated, and there's just a bottle of water in front of us, and it's not getting drunk, and so you're not getting any more hydrated. The idea of the water is not going to fix it. Anyway, Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm, my other side of my cookie, of my black and white, here with me. Mike, how are you?
You just need to stop. Listen, son, just read the script. That you are on autopilot, and I'll tell you, having been down this road twice, the good sleepers and the bad sleepers will separate themselves out around week 7. You're going to know what you got around week 7. Yeah, because
it's still just nonsense then.
My daughter was a champion sleeper. My son was the world's worst, and we knew it by week 7. So you're going to know. But
do we tell diaper stories on the show? Is that under the Cleantech umbrella?
No? We do not. We're going to keep right on going. So listen, we got to give some acknowledgments.
Had a bad one yesterday.
First. This is now next tracker water bottle. This is now a museum piece, because Next Tracker has become Next Power. We want to give congratulations to our friends there.
Seriously? That's news to me. I've been a little unglued from the system. Next Tracker is now Next Power? Next
Power. They have rolled up the supply chain. A House of Fire is moving. A big new rebrand, so that's cool.
Yeah, dude, I mean, honestly, he'd bought so much stuff lately. You keep track of the space here and there, and it's like so much more than just trackers now. Like, they bought Origami a little while back, and a few others. They had that's cool, man.
That's really cool. Number 2, I want to just acknowledge that I was harshing on Alex Peterson and Claire Quinn before the show, because what didn't make the 5-story cut is a story by Maxine Joslow in the New York Times talking about Doug, the world traveler Burgum. During the government shutdown, the fellow who's choked off all renewable energy projects on private land because they need to get his signature for unpublished, unestablished criteria. You know what Doug's been doing? Doug's been Harold Ham's free traveling salesman. He's been going all over the world selling American oil and gas, because that oil and gas industry, that's a new industry. That's struggling. They don't have the money to pay their own salespeople. Yep. Yeah, man. So they got him going all over the place. But I just got to say, that's getting your priorities straight. So on the serious side, we want to give a big listener shout out to Michael Perrone. He was effusive in his praise of the show in our 100th episode. He said, "Thanks, Paul Gerke," I guess. I added that one. And Mike Casey for continuing to deliver thoughtful discussions with all of the insights of great guest David Roberts of the Volt podcast. That was for episode 100. Glad he knew I wasn't 100. The show is episode 100. And back to you, my friend Paul
congrats
Gerke.
To all those who celebrated with us. 100 episodes is nothing to sneeze at.
It's fun.
I know the kids these days can pump those out in a couple of days over on the YouTube, but for old fogies like us, Mike Casey and Brian Mendez, who does a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes, this is a slog every week, and it's fun slog. Happy to slog with you, but 100 episodes kind of a big deal for us and everyone involved. So shout out to everyone that puts a hand on this show. There we go.
All right,
the cheering sound effect. All right, man. Hey, if you want to be on the show or got stories to recommend, I'd say reach out to Mike Casey, because I don't really read my inbox right now on paternity leave. Generally, we tell you to reach out to me. Don't do that, because I'm sure you're just not going to get an answer. Give Mike Casey a shout out. He's a really affable guy. All right, story number 1. Let's get into it. What do we got?
The Economist, first story, China's clean energy revolution will shape markets, and politics, Paul Gerke.
We have been beating this drum for a while, Mike Casey. Some facts for you. By the end of last year, China had installed 887 gigawatts of solar power capacity. That's about double Europe and America's combined total. 22 million tons of steel were used by China to build wind and solar projects just last year. That's the equivalent of building a Golden Gate Bridge every day of each working week that year. You kind of get the drift. China's manufacturing capacity and appetite for abundant, cheap, and domestic energy have made it a superpower in ways that we can only talk about right now. They're deploying clean energy on a planetary scale in ways that the rest of the world is literally unable to keep up with. They can now produce a terawatt of renewable capacity every year, pushing costs so far down that renewables are way cheaper than coal or natural gas pretty much everywhere you go. Their grid has crazy capacity everywhere you go. They don't have the data center problems that we're having, Mike. If this battle for AI or whatever you want to call it is going to be won or lost on the backs of energy accessibility and affordability, then we are very far behind the eight ball, Mike. Your thoughts on this piece?
A low carbon future that leans too much on China is risky. That country tends to use its advantages, like its control over rare earth minerals, to serve its own interests and not others. No harm, no foul, but that's just the way they play. That makes other countries uneasy about relying on it for anything essential like electricity. We can no longer realistically hit the 1.5 C climate target, unfortunately, and renewables are a way to prevent worsening climate disruption. But even beyond the climate benefits, what China has learned and our current national government seems to miss is that cheap and abundant energy is something that creates jobs. It eliminates pollution and its resulting health costs, and it boosts our national energy security. Paul, story number 2.
Second story this week from Samini Sengupta of the New York Times, titled 10 Years After the Paris Climate Agreement, Here's Where We Are. Mike, where are we?
Well, it's complicated. I think that's what I say it. All right. So, she lists 10 ways the world has changed in the last 10 years since countries signed the Paris Climate Agreement. The first is that pollution is still on the rise, but not as quickly.
Whoa.
A decade ago, warming was projected to reach 3.8 Celsius. Today, estimates have fallen between 2.5 and 2.9 degrees Celsius. These last 10 years have still been the hottest on record, with 2024 being the hottest. Hate to break it to you, fossil fuel bros. I know you're butthurt with reality, but someone also needs to tell Bill Gates this as well. Solar energy has grown faster than we thought. EVs have become mainstream. Tesla had just unveiled its luxury electric SUV, the Model X, 10 years ago. Now, 1 in 5 cars sold are electric, and according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, EVs are displacing the use of 2 million barrels of oil demand per day. 10 years ago, we agreed that wealthy industrialized countries were supposed to help poor nations adopt renewables and adapt to climate impacts, but rich countries have put little money on the table. Paul Gerke.
Samini points out in that article that coal is in an awkward position, I guess, outside of the United States, where there's some sort of undercurrent to some sort of clean coal rhetoric that we joked about on the show last week. 10 years post-Paris Climate Agreement, coal plants are shutting down pretty much everywhere. Some countries, though, still need it. Some are actually still growing in their coal use. Natural gas on the rise, thanks in large part to America, now the leading producer and exporter for some time. It is cleaner than coal, Mike, still a fossil fuel, though. Fires are driving forest loss, and corals are bleaching more often. 84% of the world's coral reefs have been impacted in the most recent bleaching event. And the other impact that she lays out is U.S. electricity demand rising, partially blamed on data centers and AI. We have made some undeniable progress in clean energy, particularly in the EV sector, but emissions are still climbing. Climate impacts are accelerating. These next 10 years, crucial for us. I feel like we say that every 10 years. Story 3, Mike.
Bob Woods, CNBC. New U.S. nuclear power boom begins with old, still unsolved problem. What to do with radioactive waste? That buzzing sound you're hearing in your ears are LinkedIn's legions of nuclear bros about to buzz your page, Paul.
Oh, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate that. I'm not really checking my LinkedIn opportunity leave. Feel free to leave it a wasteland. Nuclear is making a comeback, as you may have heard in the news, largely because of those rising electricity prices and demand for electricity to service data centers and reshoring of manufacturing amid a massive electrification from coast to coast. The Trump administration's goal is to quadruple nuclear output in the U.S. over the next 25 years, signed a deal with Westinghouse to spend $80 billion to build nuclear power across the country. We covered that story just a few weeks ago. But only 2 nuclear power plants have been built in the U.S. since 1990. You can probably name them. They went online in just the last 2 years. We're more than $15 billion over budget and years behind schedule on both. Still haven't really figured out that radioactive waste problem you alluded to either, Mike. More than 95,000 metric tons of spent nuclear fuel sitting temporarily in water-filled pools or dry casks at 79 different sites across 39 states. It's a problem we do need to address if we want to build out nuclear power. In my personal opinion, it's a much smaller problem than some of the problems presented by other generation sources. But Mike, your thoughts on this?
So, nuclear bros, we need to talk. See, there's this little problem you guys don't want to discuss, what to do with the waste. So give them credit. There are some people trying to figure out better ways to store it, like the American startup Deep Isolation Nuclear. They're combining underground burial concepts with fracking techniques to try to get combine vertical descent into horizontal storage containers or storage areas thousands of feet under the ground. The canisters of nuclear waste are forced into the horizontal section, stacked and stored for the next thousands of years. That's great if you completely avoid anything approaching a seismically active area, and if you do not get near aquifers. So there is claims about recycling nuclear waste. We want to make sure that's not another word for hyper-concentrating it. Common in the fracking circles, they like to talk about recycling their wastewater, which they really mean is they're hyper-concentrating the salts and toxic chemicals. Paul, fourth story.
Story number 4, Matthew Zeitline over at Heatmap News, titled "Data Centers and Natural Gas Are Bending the Climate Transition Curve," IEA says. What else does IEA say, Mike?
Just released its 2025 World Energy Outlook report shows that America's AI and natural gas development has made it stand out. The report looks at 2 scenarios. 1, what governments are actually doing. 2, more optimistic scenario, looking at what they say they want to do. In both scenarios, global gas demand continues rising into the 2030s, largely because of U.S. policy and low gas prices. The combined impact of Trump's tax bill and the U.S. world-leading AI development has shifted IEA's outlook for future fossil fuel consumption and pollution output. It's not just that AI and data centers are causing the IEA to revisit its figures. It's also because of higher demand for air conditioning in the Middle East and North Africa. Paul, your thoughts?
I mean, they should have air conditioning too, Mike. Those are my first thoughts. My other thoughts are that while clean energy development in the U.S. has slowed, we've made no bones about pointing that out. Think tank Ember says that momentum in other countries has sort of made up for it, especially acceleration of EV adoption. More than 20% of EVs projected in emerging markets outside of China, helping compensate for a dip on a global scale. That think tank also says this trend reflects other countries' focus on energy security. The idea here is that by accelerating decarbonization, they reduce dependence on other countries, ergo bringing in imported fossil fuels. Mike, story number 5. We got a guest patiently waiting for us to get done rambling.
Rachel Frazin has come back into the Twilight Zone, wondering what on earth got her to come back for a third time. And Democrats see electricity prices as a winning issue for 2026. Rachel, welcome back. Love to have you. And we talked about this last episode about the potency of higher electricity prices as an issue. What did you find in your reporting?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me back on for a three-peat. Very happy to be here. Seems like Democrats see this one as a winner. They think that they can really stick it to the Republicans by talking about electricity prices, especially, as you have the Trump administration canceling projects, cutting subsidies, cutting funding for renewables. Democrats see an opening here to make this a big kitchen table issue, and they're going to talk about it in 2026 and maybe even beyond.
It feels pretty dark to describe an issue that's hurting all of us as a winning issue. Like, hey, you found a real thorn in their side and our side and his ass and her ass and all of our asses. Is there any way that the Democrats actually win on this other than like pointing out the thorn?
I mean, that's politics, you know, and
Yeah,
I don't
true.
say that they are taking pleasure in it. I don't think that anybody is happy about rising electricity prices, at least not anybody that has to pay for them, maybe the companies, but no, I don't think that anybody is pleased about this, but I think that this is something that they are going to be talking about going forward. And I think, you know, they're going to be pushing for a lot of build out, you know, of especially renewable energy, but we may even see sort of an all of the above energy strategy here where they're embracing at the very least natural gas as well, you know, just to, you know, say that they're the party of lower energy prices.
Rachel, something that's of particular interest to people listening to this show, I think we care a lot less about who's up and who's down among political parties, but one thing we have talked a lot about is the, I think, high likelihood that the fossil fuel lobby is trying to get the blame for higher prices stuck on renewables' forehead, even though it is the pro-fracking policies of the current administration that are actually getting rid of the lowest cost forms of power. That's quickest to deploy, would be the easiest way to solve for higher electricity prices. Did you get a sense in your reporting that there was a push by incumbent sources to blame renewables for higher electricity prices?
So I've definitely seen from Republicans a bit of rhetoric where they're trying to say, oh, all these new projects are so expensive and that's what's adding to your power bill. But, you know, what I've heard from every independent analyst I've spoken with is, you know, more supply of fuel, be it fossil or renewable, or nuclear or anything else, is going to bring down power bills because you've got more supply. So in times of high demand, you've got more supply to meet that demand. And there may be upfront costs to building any sort of project, but it seems that that is where the truth is. I've not seen that from the fossil fuel companies specifically, and you know the utilities tend to have both. You know, I'm not aware of any utilities that are strictly a renewables or strictly a fossil utility. I mean, there might be some, but it seems like a lot of the big guys have a mix. But so I've not heard that from industry, but I have heard a lot of Republicans making that case.
I need to ask a follow-up, Paul. So we had Shannon Osaka of the Washington Post on here 2 weeks ago. I asked her this question. I'll ask you the same one. Have you heard from a single serious person, a sector analyst, someone with legitimate expertise in the power sector, make the case to you that utility scale renewables raise electricity prices? Shannon said no. Want to know if you've talked to a single serious person who says that.
I've not heard that from anybody that's not a politician.
That would be
I said no!
Just want to point that out. Mr. Gerke, last question, sir.
Yeah, Rachel, I just wanted to get a feel for, over the course of your reporting, if the stakeholders seem to recognize the sort of Schrodinger's cat situation that we're in here, where like if the data center bubble bursts and, you know, a quarter of the economy gets wiped out and hundreds of gigawatts of demand just kind of disappears from queues overnight, we're going to be in a really different situation than I think a lot of utilities are in right now. Is there a sense for like an if, then, and sort of thing, or are we just sort of hurtling toward some ambiguous estimation of how much electricity we're going to need in the short and midterm here?
You mean if the demand is not as high as it's projected to be?
Yeah, right, because like there is and there isn't this demand, right? Like some of it is online now, some of it is coming, some of it might not come, some of it is, I mean, we're struggling with a lot of the same interconnection problems that we talk about in the renewable space where, you know, projects linger in queues for years. It's sort of the same unless you're one of the big 3 or 4 hyperscalers that can push something across the line or bring your own generation.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I guess we'll have to see. Again, every estimate I've seen is that demand is going to grow and grow and grow, in large part due to these data centers. We'll see if the data centers actually do get built. It seems like, you know, industry is gearing up that as if they are. But I guess, yeah, it's a great question and great point about permitting and all those other issues. And as always, that's a hot topic in Congress and in Washington, so we'll see if there are any changes there.
Mr. Gerke, we need to go to our Cleantecher of the week.
Let's do it this week. Cleantech of the week, someone you might have actually heard of, or at least shown up on your LinkedIn page. It's Tyler Norris, head of market innovation at Google. Tyler wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about how we can manage rising electricity demand without driving up costs in households. His main point is that load growth presents an opportunity, one, to offset upward pressure on electricity rates if we plan the system to make fuller use of the infrastructure that we've already paid for. Congratulations, Tyler, being recognized as our Cleantecher of the week.
Thanks to our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez. Despite his ageist tropes, he always throws at us right before we start taping, so I'm cracking up when he starts rolling. And we want to thank Alex Peterson and Claire Quirin for gathering these stories.
I don't know where the ageist sensitivity comes in for you. I like the gray that's showing up in my beard this time of year. Thanks to Rachel Frazin for putting up with us and joining us on another episode of This Week in Clean Tech. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, leave some feedback, share a story suggestion, do whatever you like, read all the articles we discussed this week. You can click the links in the episode description or in the post on factorthis.com. We'll see you next week, everybody. Be good.
Take care.